Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining today's webinar, Intersection of Disability Financial Planning and Person-Centered Planning. We will have closed captioning noted at the bottom of your screen. Q&A and chat features available as well for any questions you may have. Should you have any technical difficulties, please contact Donald Taylor at dtaylor@tash.org. And this webinar is being recorded. Today's presentation is presented by Mary McDermott. When Mary isn't helping families navigate the world of special needs financial planning, she's being a wife to Jay and a mom to Charlie and Ruth. In addition to her leadership role at All Needs Planning and a volunteer advocate for kids with rare diseases, she takes the title Mom Boss seriously. Just ask her. Mary understands the emotional and financial aspects of caring for a loved one with a person with disabilities needs because she is a parent of a child with a rare disease. So without further ado, let's welcome Mary McDermott.
Thanks, Devon, and thanks, Donald. Thanks, Tash, for having me. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm going to ask Devon and Donald, you guys can hear me okay? I don't need to project more?
Yes.
You're good? Okay. And then I'm going to ask one more thing of you, as long as you can see my screen.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So you can see my screen, you can hear me, so no excuses. Again, I just want to thank Tash for having me. This is always, it's always really personal for us to present to groups. And this hour is precious to me, and I want to make sure it's worth it to you. Please post questions in the chat if you have them. I will pause and kind of check on those with Devon and Donald as we go through, but there are little pause sections so that you can ask questions. This is me looking super professional. Devon did my intro, it's the same. The thing that I like to tell people is I have multiple jobs, multiple hats, just like everyone else. My first job is being a fee-based financial planners for families like mine. And then also my second job is being that mom, parent to Ruth and Charlie, and then a caregiver to Ruth, and also then a wife to my husband, Jay. If it wasn't for Ruth, I don't know if I'd be doing this planning. She is the inspiration behind it. She's 9, and my other daughter, Charlie, is 11, and our rare disease is, I would say, intense. All of them are, but ours is formulated in the way of seizures and some tumors that form in her body, and so we're always monitoring and watching. For someone that's a planner, that's like asking me to go against my natural nature. And so that is kind of what the inspiration behind our group came, was like, if I'm thinking of these things so forward thinking, I want other families to make sure they're thinking of it. And so with this presentation with Tash, we're trying to think of how does this planning for those that are impacted by a disability impact their specific person-centered plan. And we try and think of, the way I describe it is like, if you can see my face, the glasses is just a traditional planning, like all the planning that we can do for every member of our family. And then when I put these glasses on, I'm looking through the lens of Ruth's person-centered plan to make sure that everything is going the way that it needs to go for our entire family, but through the lens of her plan. This is one of my favorite slides because I want you to, if you're a parent caregiver on here, awesome. If you are someone impacted by disability, also awesome. We like to help all parts and all pieces of the world of disability because we are parent caregivers, but we also have clients that just are people with disabilities. This slide is specific for those parent caregivers, so I want to make sure I'm sensitive to that. But the stages in you're in, I always like to think of, and again, I'm addressing the parent caregivers in the group. Um, Stage one, if anyone's in stage one and they just had a child and they have a disability diagnosis and a newborn, we need to give so many hearts and high fives to those people. Stage one is, I would say, one of the hardest, not hardest stages, they're all hard in different ways, but having a newborn is one thing, and then having a newborn with a diagnosis and not knowing anything about this world is two very, very hard things happening at the same time. So what things that happen in this stage one are usually birth to three programs. So you're in some kind of form of early intervention. You're learning about your state waiver programs. You're starting to edge on the world of the school district once we get into stage two. Stage two, I said this is this school age, all schools. So we're in developmental preschool. We're starting IEPs. We're starting transition planning at 14. We're starting to think if our kids are going to stay in transition planning till the age of 22. And the big transition everybody talks about in our world is usually the transition at 18. Legally, some things have to happen in that world. So we're talking about, are we going to be eligible for the Social Security? Are we going to be working in the world? Do we need to reapply for the waiver? Is there some kind of different waiver that our kids need? Are they going to be in college? Are we going to make some kind of guardianship, power of attorney, or those type of decisions? And so you want to kind of figure out between those stages how that age 18 happens. And that is the bigger transition I think we all hear about as parents and caregivers. But what I really want you to think of is every chunk of this has some work attached to it. And how can we figure out what stage we're in and then what stage we're going to go to? The ones that get ignored, I think actually are stage 3 and 4. The reason that these stages I think really get ignored or we just kind of don't want to think about them is because there's emotion attached to stage 3 and 4. At least it is for me. My emotion attached to stage 3 is fear. Fear of what my daughter's going to do after school's over. What is that going to look like? What great programs do I have in my state that can make sure that she's a wonderful part of our community here in my state of Washington? And so fear or whatever emotion you have attached to something that you're kind of procrastinating is some of the work we try and do to get people to take that next step of what does it look like in each stage. And if we're real talking about the big fear, stage 4 is the biggest one. So as caregivers, we can't get sick. I have a cold right now, if you can't tell. So I'm in the middle of the realization that I'm going to get sick and I won't be able to participate in my family as much as I want to. And we're also going to pass away. So a lot of the people that come to us are very worried about what happens to their loved ones when they're not around anymore. How will they be supported in the way that I'm supporting them? Is our estate set up well? Who will take my spot in the support of our kids? And so that is a huge kind of chunk that we really think about. I usually have people throw in the chat what stage they're in. Can we do that? Devon, is that possible? Can people throw in the chat what stage they're in? And then we'll come back to that in a little bit. If you guys could throw in the chat what stage you're in, that'd be sweet. Okay, at our group here at All Needs Planning, we have put this into categories. Oh, thanks. I think I can see these. I don't know if everybody's going to see this, but it's nice to see. Stage 3, very preoccupied with stage 4 in Michigan. Thanks, Lynn. You're the truth, telling the truth. Jennifer is between 2 and 3. Thank you guys for sharing that in there. Preoccupied is a great way to describe it, Lynn. The way we work and the way we kind of chunk this out into different sections are care, protect, and grow. So our care section has financial plans, support plans, and benefits. So if your kids are on any kind of state or federal benefits, how do we keep those on board, and how do we give them the life that they need and support them with the care plan. So our whole mission is continuation of care and continuation of financial support. Um, those are the two biggest, hardest things that families come to us with. And I, even if I know people that have lots and lots and lots of financial support, but their biggest fear is then who's going to take my spot? Because all the money in the world may not be able to find the people that can caregive like they can, is the mindset, right? Same kind of thing. There's a fear there, and an actual caregiver shortage that is real. So there's two parts happening there. But if you kind of get anything out of this today, we're always trying to do a continuation of care and continuation of finance. Some of that finance continuation is including benefits from the state and federal level. The top part is always a party, I always say, protection. So tax, legal, insurance. So we're making sure we're being tax efficient. Same kind of thing that I did with my example of glasses. It might not be as tax efficient as the family unit, but it's going to really need to be tax efficient for your loved one with a disability. So we are always like, same kind of thing through the lens of the person-centered plan. We want to make sure that it's tax efficient for your person that is impacted by a disability. Legal. So if we're going to stay on these benefits through state and federal systems, there's two places we can put funds where they don't count as their assets. Special needs, stress, and enable. We're going to talk about those two in a little bit. But the legal bucket that needs to collect the assets is a special needs supplemental trust. So that is the bucket that collects that, the assets or major assets to support our kids long term. And then insurance. What kind of insurances do we have in place? Can we supplement monies that need to go into that special needs trust with different types of insurances, life insurances specifically? I also just dabble in group benefits. If you're on the cusp of retiring or you're moved jobs, you're going to be well aware of the benefits that your family is dependent on. And we always want to evaluate any kind of benefits that your whole family benefits from you being in the working world and transitioning to retirement. And then grow. How are we invested? Are we comfortable with those investments? Do we know the continuation of finance? So who's helping us invest that now? Who's going to be the people that helps us invest and is a good fiduciary of those funds in the future? And then personal goals and relax and enjoy. This one's so hard. I get a smile on my face every time I talk about this because my personal goals are like drinking water before noon, which I haven't met yet, and I only have 45 minutes. So drinking water before noon, taking 30 minutes to myself, taking a nap on my futon. Like my personal goals seem like life things that people need, but they are for a caregiver, those are real. Like I need to drink more water, I gotta take a nap, and I gotta get 30 minutes to myself somehow. Okay, so those are literally on my notebook over here to check off every day if I've done them. And then relax and enjoy, I think, is in the world of respite. So how are we resting? Are you resting? Can we get some rest? How is that going to happen? And are we supported by hopefully a state waiver system that offers respite? And then can we find the caregivers that can support that? Okay, we're going to go through each of these sections and kind of how they're broken down. And then between each section, I will just pause and make sure that the chat, if you have any questions, we can chat about them. Okay. All right. Care. So support plan, benefits, and financial plan. So the start of a support plan for me, and I just did this exercise with my husband, is you write down everything you do for all the family members in your family. So me and my husband wrote down everything we do for my 9-year-old that happens to have a rare disease, and then my 11-year-old that is not impacted by a disability. We both wrote things down on a piece of paper, like at the dining room table, and then we cross-referenced each other, right? You've got to divide and conquer if you're a parent caregiver. And so I always say, be honest, write it all down, and then cross-reference. That's the start of a support plan, because you're writing down all the activities that happen between you and your spouse if you have one. If you're a single parent, you're doing amazing. Do that same exercise, just you are the sole person. you need another person to bounce that off of to make sure there's a backup to you. But the cross reference is really important. And that is the start of a support plan. The reason I want you to do that is because if we do get caregiving on board, where you can have somebody come in and step in, they have at least some kind of go by. One, we want something in writing in case something happens to you. And two, if we do find caregivers, we want them to have some kind of document so that they can step in. The other purpose of this is to find out what that cost would be if you weren't around. Because from the step 2, 3, 4, we're not going to be around forever. The benefits that we can have on place: SSI, SSDI, and DAC, that's a federal system. And so we talk about those usually around age 18, just because it is a determination of the disability at age 18 of your loved one. Medicaid and Medicaid waivers, those are state-based, matched federally with funding. And so each state has their own waiver system. Really encourage you to figure out your state waiver system and if you are eligible for those type of systems. And then nursing supports. Some states have very robust nursing 24/7 supports for some of our kids that really need it. Same kind of thing is through that Medicaid system. So same basic, what we talked about in the beginning. If we want to give our kids an amazing life and keep them benefit eligible if they're on them, we can put money in 2 places: special needs trust and enable. Okay. And so that's where a lot of this care section kind of relies on. As a parent caregiver, it's a lifetime cost of care for 2 people. We always want to make sure that we're being tax efficient. How are we saving? How are we putting money away effectively and efficiently for ourselves in retirement and then our loved one after we're not around? The tools available for financial planning, these are just a couple that we get questions on all the time, is ABLE, retirement vehicles, and employment benefits. We always do a spotlight on ABLE because I get a lot of questions about ABLE. I'm so sorry. The questions we get, let me get a cough drop real quick, are why would I use an ABLE is really the questions I get, or why do I need an ABLE and a special needs trust? Okay, so we need an ABLE because we really use it as an operating account for our families. So ins and outs can go in and out from there. So the story I like to tell is like, let's pretend my Ruth is working at Mod Pizza. She's 25, right? She gets $2,000 into our household from wages and $1,000 from Social Security. Now, through the rules of Social Security and Medicaid, she can only have $2,000 in her name. She's going to pay me $500 in rent, and then $500 is left in her account, right, to stay under that $2,000. Where am I going to put that if she doesn't spend it down? And so an ABLE is a really great place to put that. And all of these systems know about it. It's not a secret. It's created in that purpose. And so I really encourage people to use it as that operating account or checking account in our world. There are debit cards available. It's more of a prepaid card, which provides some safety for our families. So you load money on it. They use it for specific expenses. Those expenses are all captured on the back end. It is tied to the individual. We get a lot of questions about the qualified disability expenses. Luckily, this is one of the best definitions that we've gotten from anything that has been federally passed. It's for the health, well-being, and wellness of the person, which is amazing. So the example I give is I have a client in my state that is a little destructive and he destroys a TV every quarter. because he loves gaming, we buy a TV for him every quarter out of that Able account, which is an allowable expense for him because that brings him joy. The one thing that people are leery about is there is a Medicaid payback. So that same kind of story that I told about Ruth. Let's say she has $20,000 in there and she passes away. If she's been on a Medicaid waiver, they're gonna, from the state, claw back anything that she's used, and then pay themselves back for anything that she has used Medicaid wise. So that's why I use it as an operating account rather than a big ins and outs. I'm so sorry, guys. I haven't coughed all week, and now it's just today, of course, while I'm doing this presentation. I have a feeling you will forgive me, but so sorry about that. One of the things we do really try and do with our clients is make sure there's a cost of care projected out. So we, to the best of our abilities, really spend some time with you about what is the disability, how is it affecting your loved one, and then what are the future costs going to be. And then each of these pies are ways that we can cover those costs of care projected out into the future. Okay, that's the costs. Sorry, that's the care section. I'm going to pause here real quick and give me any questions that you guys have in this section. I'm going to look at the chat. Sorry. Anybody have any questions? It can be about Able, financial planning, putting a care plan together. Okay, all right. I'm gonna go to the protect section. Okay, I do call this the party section. Insurance. Oh, hold on. Lynn has a great question. Lynn, very specific question, but I'll talk about it a little bit up above. So Lynn says she's 74, spouse 77. They have term life that lasts until they're 82. Not sure if it's a good investment. How do I think about this? So Lynn, you're balancing costs of insurance versus face amount, and how much is that going to increase? If it's just flat over time, then maybe it is worth it. And if it does have a conversion option, if you wanted to switch to whole life, have a little smaller face amount, but have that. I think the things I think about are, have you covered all the other costs of care, and are you dependent on this face amount to fund anything versus is it just for your peace of mind knowing that there's something left over? I think the one thing we forget about with life insurance is it is tax-free benefit when you pass. So who's benefiting from it? And then is a tax-free benefit better than any of the other assets you're passing on? Are there any other things that we can leverage with that term insurance that you would want it to continue? Those are the kind of things I would think about when I'm thinking about letting it expire, canceling it now, or seeing to the life of it until you're 82. Conversion would be nice if they had that option so you could convert if you could, but starting a new policy at 74 and 77 is not going to be very cost effective if you had to go through underwriting now. Now, if you have really good health from your previous one, you can convert it to a different policy. That may be something to think about. I hope that helped, Lynn. Thanks for your question. To piggyback on what kind of Lynn was talking about in the insurance section is depending on your age, right, and what you're trying to cover. We always think of term to cover major mortgages and those type of things in our working years. So in our working years, we're trying to cover a chunk of things. any liabilities, your wages, and also this cost of care for your child. Okay, so that number that we come up with as a group is we're trying to cover all those things while you're in your working years. The types of insurances that we look at as a team are term to convert, and we do conversion to survivorship and or single life, whole life if you need it, right? So exactly what Lynn's asking is then you actually have the option down the line to convert to whole life if you wanted to continue having life insurance in place, and then have the option when you're not working anymore and you're retired to do that conversion if that is cost effective. It's something you want to do, but it's always on the table for most of our clients. Tax. So like I said, we want to be tax efficient for you as possible, but we really are going to think of the assets that you're going to pass to be as tax efficient for your loved one as possible. Things that are tax efficient for your loved one are Roths, cash, and life insurance proceeds. Those have all already had some form of tax paid on them, so they're going to go into that supplemental special needs trust with a little bit less of a tax burden. Medical expenses, this is if you are close to itemizing on your Schedule A. Remodeling a home to address accessibility needs is usually the one that pushes people over. Those can get expensive, and that can be included on your Schedule A. Another thing people miss a lot in the tax world, which I need to add to this slide, is if you are a paid parent caregiver. So if you are on a state waiver, your child may be over 18 or under 18, or your loved one, if you are paid through the waiver system to be their caregiver and they live in your home, usually that is a tax-free wage. So you should not claim those wages on your taxes if your loved one lives in your home. Legal, this is for the parents specifically, and then we'll get into the other things for your loved one. For the parent, you need your wills at the base level, wills, POAs, and medical directives for yourself completed, okay? That is, a will is a roadmap when you pass. A power of attorney is if I'm incapable, someone else can make decisions for me. And a medical directive says if I am incapacitated, something happens, these are certain medical things that I want to happen for me, okay? Now, decision-making supports, this is that big transition between stage 2 and 3 at 18 in the eyes of the world. Our loved one with a disability is an adult. And so we have different options to help assist making decisions. Guardianship, conservatorship, POA, supported decision-making has passed in some states, and then a microboard. Microboard can't make decisions, and it is kind of a newer thing on the East Coast that's happening, but it is a good circle of support, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Then the special needs trust. So our kids are on benefits. We want to keep them benefit eligible, give them an amazing life. We can only have $2,000 in their name directly. 2 places we can put money to make sure those assets stay low are an ABLE and a special needs trust. Okay, so your major assets should go into the special needs trust. Any IRAs, any property. Property gets a little funky, but depending on how you want to name out the property, any life insurance beneficiaries should be named out to the special needs trust. Let's talk about the different types of trusts. There's a first party and a third. First party is usually specific for the things that are in that example. So we see people that have gone through a divorce. Any specific child support should go into the first party. Military pension survivorship, a settlement, or accidental inheritance. So settlements are more any kind of hospital or any kind of settlement that happens at the hospital or doctor. So a lot of birth injuries, we see settlements go into a first party trust. Think of first party as your loved one with a disability. It's their funds, first party funds, their monies. That's a first party trust, needs to be created. Everyone else in the world that wants to contribute to a trust, that's third party. Anybody else but your loved one with a disability would be a third party trust, okay? This is where that intersection to me of why this whole presentation is here of the person-centered plan versus the financial plan. This is kind of where this is kind of meeting the road, right? Where Where are my loved ones' funds going, and where are my funds going? And how am I going to support this person throughout their entire life? Third party is the one we see a lot happen unless there was a settlement. It is for supplemental needs. You can name out your trustees, you can name out a secondary beneficiary, anybody can contribute. So if we also have grandparents, and I always say grandparents have the best of intentions, but it's not great execution because they don't usually communicate about their estate planning a ton. They're very tight with their stuff. So what we try and get people to do is as much work as they can ahead so that then they have done all the work to set up the trust, do all this stuff for themselves, and then the grandparents can name out that trust specifically as well. This is how visually, I'm a visual story person, so you'll get that obviously from this presentation, but this is the way I like to think of all the legal things that need to surround your person. So if we're going to talk about a person-centered plan, that is in the middle and has a whole bunch of other stuff attached to it. This is just the legal like circle that we go around. The thing I tell people too is like we hear a lot of, man, I should have done this years ago. Like I'm procrastinating doing my legal. I don't have enough people in my circle. Get that a ton. The way I kind of relieve some of that stress of going in and getting your will done and doing a special needs trust is think of it as a 5-year plan. It's not in stone. This stuff is not forever. Yes, you will have to go back and amend it in 5 years, but if you think of it as a 5-year plan, people older than you and then your age become more available to take positions in the roles of your person with the disability. And so I procrastinated mine for that same reason. I didn't think I had enough people in my circle. But the reality was, I had plenty of people in my circle. I just thought they were my parents' age, so they were too old. Well, they could do it for 5 years. And then I have a 5-year buffer to think of people that were closer to my age that could take over the roles that I needed in my daughter's life um, as we evolve, right? So if you're procrastinating doing your legal, please just think of it as a 5-year chunk. Like I said, a micro board is a formal circle of support. It's a legally registered entity in every state. Every state has a different way of doing it, of course. Why would it all be the same? It has the care plan, the person-centered plan, and they're all parts of the conversation. It has meeting minutes. Guardians and trustees can be a part of the board, but they can also not, and they're just recipients of information of what the person needs. So if anybody's done any traditional board work for non-for-profits or anybody out there, it acts the same way. It's just the whole purpose is to make sure continuity of care plan and the person-centered plan happens past whoever's doing the bulk of the work now. Okay. Like I said, they're fairly new kind of concept, kind of going East Coast to West Coast, a lot more East Coast ones. One of my favorite micro boards that we have and we help coach some of the participants are, there's a gentleman in Pennsylvania, he's in his 50s and he has someone that was his PT almost his entire, at least through his teenage years on. And she's 80. And her whole job on the micro board is fun. That's pretty great to have someone on your micro board that their whole job is to make sure you have fun that year. So she comes to the meetings with requests of what could be fun. This client happens to love the beach, so they got to make sure they get to the ocean at least once a year. And so they try and map out the plan, who's going to go, who is the caregiver that's going to go, what beach are they going to visit, is it a good time of year? Like she's the one that does all that work on the micro board as a position of she's in charge of fun. Okay. Okay, I'm going to pause real quick on the party section of protect, legal, insurance, all those things. Anybody got questions? Did I lose everybody? Is everybody sleeping? Donald's not sleeping. Thanks. Jennifer, does inherited property typically fall into a first party special needs trust? Inherited property. Let me play this out, Jennifer. Tell me if I'm on track. So let's pretend I'm going to use myself. Let's pretend my dad passes away and he names me out in his will to take over the house. I inherited that property. So if it's in my name and I have a disability, that would be a first party conversation. Now, if my dad passed and says this house needs to go into the trust that I created, which is a third party trust, you can do that because I never inherit it. It skips me and goes straight to be owned by the special needs trust. Now, there are some rules around if a trust owns a home, it needs to be the sole benefit of the person. So that gets a little trickier of who else lives there. Is there a caregiver that lives there? Is there a boyfriend, spouse, something else, somebody else that lives there? So when a special needs trust owns a home, it needs to be for the sole benefit of the person with the disability. But if we don't directly give them the house in an estate document and it goes into the trust, it can go into a third party. I hope I answered that okay. Jennifer, you'll get my info too. I can always put my I'll put my email in here and you can ask me if that does not. I'm gonna put my email in here really quick. If that doesn't answer your question, you can always email me. Okay, and then hopefully I can get that answered for you. That is pretty nuanced though, but yeah. Okay. Perfect, Jennifer. All right, the growth section. So this is invest, relax and enjoy, and family goals. So we always want to make sure the investments match your goal, right? So a lot of our families are preserving as much of the assets that they can to pass on to their kid. Now, there is always a conflicting goal of like, yeah, but I need X amount in retirement and I need to support my loved one, but how do I balance those things? So we're always having really big conversations, I say, about conflicting goals. So same kind of thing if we're feeling stuck with having conversations with financial professionals. I tell you guys straight up, like, we are financial planners, so we have these conversations about money all the time, and there's always multiple goals to reach, and we got to prioritize them, figure out what your money's doing for you, and make sure that it aligns with your heart and soul. I always say if something wakes you up in the middle of the night money wise, there needs to be a conversation. We are matching that cost of care with the funding. So what do we have to fund the cost of care, and are we making sure there's no gaps? My favorite thing that I can hear people say after they've worked with us is, man, I feel like so supported. I am a direct person. I do want to make sure you guys understand that your time is so valuable to me, but that relies on me be very direct with you. Now, what I don't want to hear when you come to me is I should do this, I should have done that. Nobody comes to me with like, man, I did everything and I just want you to look it over. Okay. Let go of that shame. Let's go of that guilt. We all have it as parent caregivers. Like, we're doing the best we can. I have a mug that tells me I'm the world's okayest mom, and I believe it. So just know, like, you are doing all you can. And I believe that in my soul. So let go of all that. We need to be rested. I have a cold right now. My child just went into middle school, and I thought kindergarten was awful to get sick, but middle school is 6 times worse to me. Like, I've been sick for 6 weeks. So I have to start resting. I have to start taking care of myself. We are in a crazy time right now where we do a lot of presentations. I'm traveling a lot, and I can feel it. I can feel it in my body that I'm not resting and taking care of myself enough because I'm getting really sick a lot. We do ask people to do things, and it's not always successful. Like, we had a client go on a vacation with their child with a disability, and it was a nightmare for them, and that was not fun to experience. But what we got out of it was more information, so we can make another plan so that they can go places that they want to go. Just it might not involve a plane, might not involve a hotel room. We have no control over the sound, but it might involve, a condo somewhere where they own, and so they can control it. The family goals, I really want people to, once you kind of have this pressure of some of this stuff being resolved, like what big goals do we have? This is the same thing. This is where that person-centered plan and the financial plan kind of are going to intersect, right? So what are the dreams we have for our adult or child with a disability? What are ours, and how are we going to combine those, right? I think that's super, super hard, and it does conflict sometimes. My husband tells me I need hobbies. I'm good, I think. But and this is my favorite part because this kind of brings all in, but every person in the family needs a person-centered plan. And then how do we mesh them? How do we bring them together? How do we make sure that care aligns with the finance, aligns with the goals? And that is our big, big goal. Lynn, I'm not ignoring you. I see your note in there. I'm going to come to you in just a minute. So the grow section, and this is actually kind of should be overall how we start all of our conversations about any of the categories, is what do we have goal wise? What do we have in, like, where do we want to go? For this specific one, does your plan cover the cost of care of your special needs loved one? How will we need, like, how much will we need in retirement accounting for that person and beyond? And then do you have any other goals that need additional funding? And what are the gaps and how do we find them, right? So this is like project management 101, problem solving 101 is like, what do we have going on now? What is our goal? And then are there gaps and how are we going to get there? Okay, so this just happens to be in the grow section. I just like to go over that in the grow section, but you can apply this to anything that you need tackled, right? So I always want to make sure like we start talking about the funding and the finance, because that bubbles up all the other things that we need to make sure that we're covering. So we really want to make sure that cost of care is addressed, and we match it with whatever funding you have for your family. Conflicting goals are always going to happen. So like I said, I have an 11-year-old that does not have a disability. She told me last week she wants to be a neurosurgeon. Well, I haven't quite college funded enough for neurosurgeon level. So like that's good information for me to have, so that's a conflicting goal, right? So how do I account for siblings? I think is a huge portion of this as well, which we address probably more than most, but we want to make sure siblings are also getting the attention they need, and not just continuation of care, because they're going to need it too, and continuation of finance. Okay, I'm going to go through these next couple slides. I got 15 minutes, so I'm going to go through these next ones, and then we'll just talk about your questions. This is our process and our approach. Same kind of thing. Introduction is where are you? Strategy is where you want to go. Figure out the cost of care, and then how are we going to solve that together? Where are the gaps and how are we going to make sure they're covered? We do have, this is just the first step kind of to talk to us with the action roadmap, but this little graphic over here on the right is how we meet clients every quarter as well. So we meet with you every quarter to cover these sections. And this, I think next slide shows that too. So that's how we kind of cover it. The thing that I like is if you have a huge support need. So if we have clients that are kind of going through that 18 transition, about to go on Social Security, we make sure that they get the support meetings that they need. And sometimes that takes 6 months rather than 3 months. So we always try and be flexible with our meeting schedules and how we're meeting people where they are. I like you to see us. This is my two partners. We're all very different, which makes it awesome. But I started in financial planning, like I said, in 2016. I was pregnant with my daughter that has a rare disease. So I've always been in the financial planning world. Just once she came into mine, kind of changed the focus to only helping families like yours. Kristen had the same story. She just happened to love investments. So she was on the trading floor and her love is investments. Her love language is numbers. And then Dr. Kathy Matthews is our chief financial strategist, family strategist. So she doesn't do any financial, any of that. She actually has her doctorate in human behavior, which makes our group meetings interesting. But she does everything from waivers, Social Security help, housing, anything outside of the financial. So continuation of care is kind of Kathy's department. Continuation of finance is me and Kristen. Lynn, I'm gonna come to your question. I was gonna leave this slide up. We only have 15 minutes, so I want to make sure there's time for questions, but I do have an example family at the end of these slides, and I'm going to make sure that Devon has these slides so she can send them out to the group. But if you want to go through an example of the Smith family, it's at the very end of these slides that'll get sent to you. If you want advice from me or help, click on the left box. If you want, we do have a learning lab we just launched. This is kind of like a master class type model where you can go through modules on your own and try and do this work on your own. But I always want to really provide any kind of help we can provide in this space. We're here to help. So if you want to meet with me and get your questions answered specifically, Jennifer, that probably might be you. Just click on that QR code. It'll go to my calendar. And then if you want to kind of see what the learning lab looks like, which is a DIY, go through videos on your own, that is the learning lab. Okay, Lynn, share this with everybody. So I'm going to read her question. We have a marital trust. We also have a special needs trust set up for our son, but it's not funded. We assume the marital trust will spill partially into the special needs trust when we're both gone, aside from gifts from other people. Is there any reason to fund the special needs trust now? Lynn, this is my question I get all the time. I mean, some people fund them now, some people don't. I don't fund them due to just logistical reasons. Think of the special needs trust as its own entity. It's a we're almost to Christmas. It's a Christmas present, right? And it's a box. And you can put anything inside the box that you want. So you can have a checking account in there, you can have a Roth in there, you can have stuff inside the box, right? The special needs trust isn't an account, right? And then the wrapping paper around it tells everybody outside, like, this doesn't count as an asset for my child. The hard part with you funding it now is like it's going to have a tax return. It has pretty strict, like it has that wrapping paper around it. So if you needed a distribution for anything that may not allow, then you can't take it out of that box with the wrapping paper, right? So you may need the money. What if you needed the money to fix your roof or something? Like, I'm just trying to think of something that you might need it, and you overfunded that special needs trust with monies that you might need in your lifetime, right? So there is some nuances to that. I would say, depending on what your specific family situation is, but that is how a marital trust works. It also is called a living trust. They call a trust while you're alive multiple different things, but a marital trust, a living trust, different types of things. It's just a trust that holds all your assets now. So when you pass away, it's easier for it to go on for the administrator to decide where it needs to go. And usually you've named out the special needs trust. So Lynn, if you have monies that you're not going to need in your lifetime, you could throw it in there, but it does require that thing's going to need a tax return. It is a living entity, so you have to do a tax return for it once it's funded. Does that answer your question, Lynn? Yes. Okay. Who else has questions? Open architecture. You can ask me anything. Ask me about rare diseases. You can ask me why I did a presentation when I have a cold and I was coughing the whole time. Also, Devon or Donald, you guys have questions too. Ask me anything. Ten whole minutes. Questions on able accounts. Do you want me to go to that slide, Jennifer? Yeah. What questions you got, Jennifer? All the characteristics are kind of on the right. Jennifer, can you still select one from another state to use? So what state? It kind of depends on what state you live in, Jennifer. Arizona. Okay, if you have like state taxes, like Arizona has its own state tax, a state specific able account can give you a tax benefit, like a credit, or if you contribute to it. Okay. There are um, able accounts that you can use nationwide. So they are specific able accounts. I know Oregon and Virginia are the biggest ones that have nationwide able accounts so you don't have to live in those states to get into those type of able accounts. They will on there say specifically what states they support. I'm going to put this in here. I don't have the website. I think it just is Able Today, but I do use Able Today as a reference point for comparing. It has a really nice comparable tool on Able Today's website. And so they're sponsored by the state treasurers, and those are the people that monitor Able, and they support Able accounts in every state. And so it's not affiliated with any state. It only is to get more people to get Able accounts. So you can compare states. So let's say, Jennifer, you're in Arizona and you're like, okay, what does Arizona's plan look like compared to Virginia's plan that's for everyone in the US compared to Oregon's plan that's everyone in the US? And then it'll show you the columns of comparable things. The things I look for in an Able. If you get a state credit, I want you to affiliate with the state that you're in. So Virginia, very specifically, you get a credit if you contribute. Does it have a prepaid debit card? Because that is very important to me for a lot of our clients to use as a checking account. And then if your state is Medicaid payback, you don't get out of it if you go to a different state. So Medicaid payback is always going to be part of it, depending on how you're. Yeah, that was another question from Allison. Let me jump to that one, and then I'm going to answer Lynn's again. So I think, Jennifer, let me know if I didn't answer any of your Able questions. Allison, I'm going to jump to yours. Do you know how much different states are handling asset recovery against Able accounts? I think you said state recovers against Medicaid payments. Yep, it is, Allison, up in the air. A lot of states are repealing asset recovery for Medicaid from Able accounts. So they are kind of all going backwards, where like this feel like a good idea to get this passed, but it's actually not helpful. They're not recovering a lot because people are using them as operating accounts. They're just using them as checking accounts. So they're not getting large balances inside of them. And so I think it's not really functioning the way that they thought it might. So a lot of states are repealing Medicaid recovery when the person passes away. Every state gets to handle it differently, Allison. So that is the hard part of that answer for you. If you want to put your state in there, I might know about it, but it just depends on where you are. Okay, Jennifer, I'm glad that resource was good. I hope that helps you compare which one you can kind of go down which road you want. Okay, let's go to Lynn. If no one else, can a paid caregiver have a power of attorney or guardianship for the person they care for? Lynn, this is a very specific question for it is state. So the whoever pays you as a paid caregiver may have rules on it, and also then the county you live in the guardianship rules and the state rule legislator might have rules on it. So I know in my state of Washington you can be, but not every state allows that. So what Lynn is saying is, let's say I am Ruth's legal guardian, so I have guardianship for my daughter. If I have guardianship in some states, that state won't allow me to be a paid caregiver for her. even if she's over 18 and the state allows it, because I'm a guardian. So I have control over her as a person, and then I'm also fulfilling a caregiving job. So that becomes a conflict in some states, which is hard, Lynn. I don't love this rule. I'm not the rule maker. Also, don't shoot the messenger. So ways that people don't do that is one parent becomes the guardian and one parent is the caregiver. Or I have had clients who they know who the future guardian is going to be. So if their kids are older, then they actually assign the future guardian to actually be the guardian now. And then both parents can fulfill caregiver hours. If their child gets over 40 hours, then both parents sometimes have to fulfill those hours. Lynn, does that answer? Okay. Okay. I hope, Lynn, that answers your question. And then Allison, yes, Oregon. Yeah, a lot of are passing a law that says there can only be asset recovery to the extent that it's required under federal law. I'm curious about what this is looking like in other states. Yeah, like I said, a lot of states are kind of repealing recovery. It's just slow. As slow as it is to roll it out, it's going to be as slow as it is to kind of repeal it. So, okay, great, Lynn. That makes sense. I hope I answered your question, Lynn. I'm worried I might not have, but I hope I did. Lynn, Jennifer. I got 3 minutes, but I just want to make sure you guys got your questions answered. I'm going to stop sharing real quick. So, thank you guys for being patient with me and being sick. I'm so sorry. So sorry.
Thank you so much for everyone joining today. That was a lot of information, good information to have, and please reach out if should you have any other questions. It's important to get everything lined up. You never know what can happen. So we thank you again, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.